In 1930, Mahatma Gandhi walked 240 miles to the sea just to make a pinch of salt. Because in British India, making your own salt was illegal. Not smuggling weapons, not printing rebel newspapers. Salt, the most common substance on earth, and an empire had made it a crime to touch it. That single walk helped bring down the British Raj. This is the story of how something you pour without thinking, something sitting in a shaker on your table right now, has been worth more than gold, has decided the outcome of wars, and has toppled governments. By the end of this video, you will never look at your salt shaker the same way again. Salt's story doesn't start with a war. It starts with survival. Your body cannot function without sodium. It runs your nerves. It moves your muscles. It keeps your fluids balanced. Miss it long enough, and your body shuts down. Early humans didn't know the biology, but they knew the feeling. And salt did something else too. Before refrigeration, it was the only way to stop meat and fish from rotting. It pulled out the moisture. It starved the bacteria. It turned food that would spoil in days into food that could survive a winter or a voyage. Whoever controlled salt controlled how far you could travel, how long you could store food, whether you could survive away from a river or a coast. That's why salt got a nickname you've heard but never questioned: white gold. Not a figure of speech, a literal statement of value. Far from the sea, salt was worth its weight in metal, because nothing else could replace it. So the earliest infrastructure projects in human history weren't built for gold, weren't built for spices, they were built for salt. Ancient civilizations built their first trade networks around one thing. Salt already had roads of its own. In Italy, the Romans built the Via Salaria, the Salt Road. It ran from Rome to the Adriatic coast, just to move salt inland. Its name comes from salarium, the Roman salt allowance. That's where we get the word salary. Roman soldiers weren't just paid in coin. Part of their wage was salt. So next time someone says they're worth their salt, that's a 2,000-year-old idiom about a soldier earning his pay. Rome wasn't alone. In medieval Germany, a 100-kilometer route ran the Lüneburg salt mines to the port of Lübeck. That trade built the Hanseatic League, one of the most powerful merchant networks in Europe. Across the Sahara, Tuareg nomads carried slabs of salt by camel. They traded it for gold and ivory. Not spices, not silk. Salt for gold. Pound for pound, worth the same as the metal it bought. 3 continents. 3 civilizations that never spoke to each other, all building roads, mines, and caravans around the same white crystal. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a preview. Because if empires were already building roads for salt, it was only a matter of time before they built wars for it too. This is the part most people never learn. Salt wasn't just fought over. It was used as a weapon. Take the Civil War. Union commanders knew Confederate soldiers needed salt to preserve meat, to treat wounds. So they didn't just target troops. They hunted down and destroyed Confederate salt works, like the ones in Saltville, Virginia. Sherman said it plainly: salt was as important as gunpowder. Destroy the salt, and you cripple the army, no shots fired. Napoleon learned this the hard way. During the 1812 retreat from Moscow, his troops ran out of salt. Wounds wouldn't heal. Infections spread. Soldiers who should have survived didn't. One of history's greatest commanders, undone in part by a mineral he never thought twice about. 2 of history's most studied wars, both decided by something sitting in your kitchen shaker. Not gunpowder, not troop numbers, salt. And if salt could decide wars between empires, it could start wars of its own. Salt wars weren't always empire against empire. Sometimes it was a government against its own people. 1540. Pope Paul III slaps a new salt tax on Perugia. The citizens rebel, an armed uprising against the Pope himself. Over salt. He doesn't back down. He crushes the rebellion, conquers the city, then builds a fortress, the Rocca Paolina, right on top of the homes he destroyed. Every resident who looked at it saw exactly what happens when you fight the church over salt. Centuries later, a different war. One barely taught in American classrooms. 1877, West Texas. Private landowners claim mineral rights to salt lakes the local Tejano community had used freely for generations. To them, it wasn't a commodity. It was a shared resource, as old as the land. Outsiders fence it off, charge for it. The result? The San Elizario Salt War, an actual insurgency. 20 Texas Rangers surrendered to the rebels, the only mass surrender in Ranger history. The local leader, Louis Cardis, is murdered. A pope building a fortress over crushed homes. Texas Rangers surrendering to civilians. Two wars, two continents, 300 years apart. Same cause. Someone trying to control salt that people believed should be free. But taxing salt didn't stay local. In some countries, it became policy, and it would go on to redraw a nation's map and help collapse an empire. Perugia and Texas show what happens when a salt tax sparks sudden violence. France shows something scarier, a tax that reshapes a country for centuries, and no revolt ever stops it. Late 1200s. French kings impose a salt tax, the Gabelle. Not uniform, not fair. Some regions were high tax, forced to pay steep prices for a mineral their bodies couldn't live without. Other regions, better connected, paid a fraction for the same substance. That wasn't bureaucracy, that was a system, and it carved a permanent economic divide into the map of France. One researchers can still trace today. A tax on a kitchen ingredient, outliving the tax itself, outliving the monarchy that created it. Still visible in France, centuries later. For over 500 years, French peasants paid this tax with no say in it. Smuggling salt was a capital crime. Smugglers were sent to the galleys, or executed, and the resentment fed straight into the French Revolution. When the Gabelle finally fell, it wasn't a footnote, it was a symbol. Even control over something as basic as salt can break a nation's patience. And nowhere would that lesson land harder than a century later, on the other side of the world, when one man decided to walk to the sea. Now we're back where we started. A man walking 240 miles to the sea, just to touch salt. 1930. The British Raj controls India with an iron grip. Its most effective weapon isn't an army. It's a monopoly. Indians can't produce their own salt, can't sell it, not smuggle it, not steal it, make it. Every household forced to buy British salt at a British price for a substance sitting free in the ocean, along thousands of miles of Indian coastline. Gandhi didn't need a weapon. He needed a symbol. Every Indian, rich or poor, literate or not, could understand instantly. March 12, 1930. He sets out on foot from his ashram toward the coastal village of Dandi. 240 miles, 24 days. Crowds joining him at every village. April 6th. He reaches the shore, bends down, picks up a lump of natural salt from the mud, and breaks the law. On purpose, in front of the world's press. It sounds too simple to matter, but it ignites a movement. Millions of Indians start making their own salt, in open defiance. The Raj arrests over 60,000 people, including Gandhi. Doesn't matter. The point's already made. The British Empire can be broken, one act of peaceful defiance at a time. Historians call it the turning point, the moment India's independence movement became unstoppable. Less than 2 decades later, the British Empire is gone from India, an empire of 300 million people, brought down in part by a fistful of mud and salt. Salt's story doesn't end with empires. It's still being written, right now, in your kitchen. For most of human history, the danger was never having enough salt. Today, that's flipped completely. The American Heart Association says, no more than 2,300 milligrams a day. Optimal target, 1,500. Americans eat over 3,100 every single day. Here's the part that should sound familiar. More than 70% of the sodium you eat doesn't come from your salt shaker. It's already in the food. Bread, pasta sauce, salad dressing, canned soup. deli meat. Salt isn't just seasoning anymore. It's a preservative, a flavor mask, engineered into processed food at a scale the ancient salt roads could never have imagined. And the damage is real. Hypertension now affects 1.39 billion adults worldwide. Heart disease is still one of the leading killers on the planet. Excess sodium is one of the most well-documented reasons why. Some governments are fighting back, the same way they once fought over salt. Through policy, the UK set sodium reduction targets on packaged food. Other countries are pushing manufacturers, not consumers, to change. Because the real source was never the shaker. It was the supply chain. The same mineral that paid Roman soldiers, sparked a war in Texas, helped collapse the British Empire, now sitting quietly in your bread, your soup, your sauce, doing its damage slowly enough that nobody notices, until decades pass. Think back to where this started. A man in 1930, walking to the edge of the ocean, breaking the law, just to pick up a lump of salt from the mud. That same crystal, sitting in a shaker on your table right now, worth more than gold. It paid Roman soldiers, built empires, broke them, smuggled, taxed, fought over. Eventually, the spark that helped end British rule over 300 million people. Wars were fought over salt before anyone had heard of oil. And today, it's still shaping the world. Just quietly, no armies, no marches, no headlines. Just a mineral engineered into almost everything you eat, doing to your health what scarcity once did to empires. 10,000 years from now, someone might make a video about the thing in your kitchen you've never questioned either. Until then, next time you reach for that shaker, remember, you're not just seasoning your food, you're holding the most consequential mineral in human history. If this surprised you, subscribe. Every week, we dig up the hidden history behind the things you never thought to question. Salt was just the beginning.